Alex is like, you've got to come in the bathroom. You have to come in here. And I thought, okay, she's playing a joke on me. Like, this is going to be great. So I walk in and there's literally these two girls doing their hair and they both turn around at the same time and they had these shirts on that said, ask me about my podcast.
I had seen them and I'm like, oh my God, like I'm about to start one. Like, what can you tell me? And I mean, it was just fascinating. They had so much advice for us. So we hung out in the bathroom probably for another 20 minutes. Then finally one of us said, do we want to go get a drink and talk about this? In the bathroom.
That's Annie Holcombe and Alex O. Husner. They co-host the Alex and Annie podcast. They grew a rental portfolio from 0 to 1,500 properties. That took just 2 years. They reveal how vacation rental storytelling works. It earns a seat at destination promotion tables. Hotels already occupy those tables.
Hotels in markets, New York's a great example, they shut down the short-term rentals, but most of those hotel companies that are involved or backing some of that regulation that happens have short-term rental arms. They're diving into that space. They have timeshares, they have it. So they're talking out of both sides of their mouth, in my opinion.
Most vacation rental operators see hotels as their main competitor, but Alex and Annie show that's the wrong fight. The real risk is invisibility in your own market. Hotels already hold seats with tourism bureaus and regulators. When you ignore those tables, you lose before regulation arrives. In this episode, you'll learn why hotels lobby for short-term rental bans and why do those same hotels quietly build their own rental arms. Also, we'll learn why proactive relationships with chambers and city officials protect your business before restrictions hit. I'm Calvin Tilokee, and this is Socially Awkward.
So what was that experience like with Expedia and marketing vacation rentals? How did that differ from what you experienced with hotels?
Complexity of it. I mean, vacation rentals has a lot of fees associated with staying. So when you stay at a property, you're going to typically have a registration fee, which sometimes you'll have it at a resort, on a hotel side, but you have a cleaning fee. You pay that separate. Sometimes there is a fee to heat a pool or a fee for trash, fee for linens. Like there are markets where actually linens are not provided. And that's kind of common in some areas where barrier islands where they can't do centralized laundry because they don't have industrial laundry facilities. So I know I vacationed growing up on the Outer Banks of North Carolina for years, and we always had to pack our sheets and towels, and we brought everything with us. And so that's some of those things were just still in place throughout the country. And there's no operations vary by the company, they vary by the market, they vary by the seasonality, whether you're ski or beach. Like there's a lot of variables there, and the channels just didn't understand that. It was very much like, a hotel is pretty simplistic. You have a room with one bed, a room with two beds. Sometimes you have a suite, but everything is included, one flat price plus your tax, and you're good to go. That's just not how vacation rentals work. Not to mention the level of amenities that you have. So if you're renting a home, you've got hot tubs and pools and, multiple bedrooms with multiple bed configurations, bunk beds and futons and all kinds of things. And so the OTAs just weren't set up for that. So it's been a learning curve for them. I think they've made a lot of good strides, but until you can kind of make sure that we're telling the true story of what this rental looks like for the consumer, it makes it difficult to use the channel. So it was a learning proposition for everybody involved.
Yeah. Yeah, that definitely sounds like a steep curve for the hotel marketing space. I mean, as you just outlined, there's so many different things. I didn't even know 30% of what you just said.
Oh,
you know what I mean? I didn't know that was the case.
Yeah,
having to bring in your own sheets is not something that you would think about. As a former revenue manager, though, that sounds awesome. Imagine if you just hey, listen, we said you'd have a room. No one said anything about a bed.
Right. Exactly.
I can see your content coming on this one.
Yeah. The add-ons.
Yeah.
No sheets. You want sheets? Why?
Sheets. Well, that's going to be an extra $35 a night. Pillows. How many? Now choose wisely because they're $25 a pop.
Exactly. Yeah. Most people just brought their linens. But when the founder of Condo World started the company, he said, I don't want people having to bring their own linens. And it was a novel concept at that time that he made the first vacation rental company in our area, at least, that did provide the linens. And not just do we provide them, you could not bring your own. I mean, like, I guess you could, and you could change them out, but that was not something that we even talked about because he wanted it to be more like a hotel experience. So those types of companies, they're definitely still around. They're more prevalent in like the traditional beach home type of markets, like Outer Banks, Myrtle Beach in some cases. But in most cases, you get your sheets included now.
Now, are you guys seeing that vacation rentals are more successful in areas where there's just less hotels, or have we gotten to the point where they're pretty competitive with the hotel experience?
I think that's kind of like one of those depends questions. Like there are markets where they absolutely are very competitive. The condos do really well against hotels, especially in the off season. It goes down to the destination, the marketing. So we've been having a lot of conversations as of late about what DMOs and CVBs are actually doing with that inventory. Some of them don't know that exists. Some of it ignore that it exists. And some of them just are still trying to figure out what it looks like to partner with them. So there are markets where it's highly successful. I mean, Orlando is a great example of there's a ton of vacation rental properties there. There's also a ton of hotels. And so it really just depends on what is the guest coming? What is their intent for travel? Is it for a convention? Is it there for family? Is it there for, a work trip combined with a family trip? There's that really just is kind of like, again, the messaging to the consumer and what their travel needs are. I don't know, Alex, you want to jump on that one too?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think it really comes down to the type of traveler that's going to that destination more than anything else. That, Myrtle Beach, for example, isn't a big corporate business travel location, but is a really nice mix of hotels and vacation rentals that, kind of work together there. And I think even if it's not a corporate thing, if I'm just traveling with my husband, we typically do stay in a hotel. But if we're traveling with Annie and her husband and 3 other friends, we're probably going to get a vacation rental because it just makes more sense, not only economically, but also for enjoyment of the stay to have everybody together in one place. So it's really about like knowing the audience, I think, is the biggest thing.
Yeah, and I think that's marketing in general, right? Knowing your audience is going to be key to doing anything.
Yeah,
but it's a good point, because the first time I stayed at a vacation rental, we were in Switzerland, my wife and I. That's maybe 10 years ago. The first time I went with her, we stayed at a hotel, and this is like right on Lake Geneva, very small town, so it's not a ton of things to do, right? So you kind of get out of the room, you have breakfast, and you just walk around. But mostly you just want to sit, read a book, and just look at the lake all day, But in a hotel room, it's not as easy to do, especially if it's just your regular room, unless you get something with a balcony or something like that. So when we went the following year, we actually did a vacation rental. We rented a house a little further up the mountain, hot tub outside, and just spectacular views. And it was such a better experience because I felt like we got more of the day. You didn't have to get up at a certain time to go get breakfast because breakfast was going to close. We woke up at 11, we cooked breakfast at 11, and then you could hang out on the patio until 9, 10 o'clock at night because we had that space to enjoy. Yeah. It just felt like we got more out of it by being in a home.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Makes sense.
But I want to circle back to the beginning before we dive more into the marketing piece. How did you two even meet? Doesn't sound like you worked at the same company.
No.
No, we didn't. But our paths crossed a few different ways. And again, this is in the years that I was at Condo World. That I think the first time we met, Annie was part of it. Was working for a distribution channel management company, and we were using that service for the business. And I don't know how it escalated that we became so friendly, but I guess just our energy, we had fun on the calls. And then at some point we must've gotten each other's digits and started texting on the side. I don't really know. Right. But then we stayed in touch. And then I remember there was a conference in Miami, that it was the first time I was going to a conference by myself without other people from my company. And I didn't really know anybody that was going to be at this event. And I was really nervous going into it. And I remember when I saw her, I was like, oh my God, thank gosh, I know somebody here. And it's like somebody that I'm comfortable with. And so we sat at breakfast, and I remember we talked about our dogs and just kind of, casually hung out. And then it was, fast forward a few years, like 2021, so post-COVID, Annie got invited to do these Clubhouse get-togethers, which Clubhouse, I don't even know if it's around anymore, but it was like live podcasts that if you missed it, you didn't get to hear it. And so she was hosting these great topics that we were talking about, DMOs and just tourism and, the broader sense and activities and like how vacation rentals can work with them. And I was on a couple of them with her, and we were just texting again and said, this would be fun to do as an actual podcast that people can listen to, not just right in the moment there. And so that kind of planted the seeds. And then as we started thinking, okay, this could be a real thing. What are we going to call it? And we came up with Alex and Annie because it is our names, but it's a little bit of a play on Alex and Annie. But then we said, well, how are we going to describe what it is that we do? And so we were trying to think of something catchy, and we thought like the Real Housewives were the real women of vacation rentals. And so when we started telling people about our idea, people loved it, and they kept asking, like, when's the first episode come out? Like, what is it going to be? And we didn't even have our microphones yet. We had no idea how to do any of this, but we decided let's put some effort to it and let's figure it out. And it took off and was accepted within our industry really quickly, and literally has just been. It's had a mind of its own in a way that it's just we've grown and we've opened so many doors through the show, but both for us and for the people that come on the show. And it's just been a really fulfilling part of our careers to this point. So.
Yeah.
And did I forget anything? I know there's a lot of details in between.
No, I mean, I think there was some like really kind of those light bulb moments that kind of come up, or like we started the show as like aha moments, but there was things that kind of happened leading up to it that we look back on, and it was like, oh, well, that like that makes sense now, or like it was just a seed that was planted, and like it's a big kind of mantra that we have about planting seeds that will sprout down the road. But we had gone to the first conference after COVID. It was like the very first VRMA. And we'd been joking about it, like texting about it. And I just happened to have the Bitmoji app on my phone, and I connected with her, and I was like, oh, they have one with a microphone. And like, that was like, okay, we could do this. So like, this is how our logo came to be. But we were at the conference, and this story is just, it's one of those vivid moments that will always stick with me. And that we had been talking about it, and we ran into a real good friend of ours that we like had known through the Clubhouse and talk, like podcast, and didn't really know well, but like knew, like we know you, like we hadn't seen him in person a lot, Will Slickers. And so he had a podcast, we were trying to grow a podcast network, and we'd been talking to him. So we sat down with him and talked with him. And Alex went into the ladies' room, and there was these two girls in there that they were trying to get into their rental, but it wasn't ready yet. So they were having to kind of, get dressed and like regroup after flying in the bathroom. So they had all their stuff strewn out all over the place. And Alex is like, "You got to come in the bathroom. You have to come in here." I was like, can we just wait? Like I can stand out here. And then she's like, "No, you have to come in here." And I thought, okay, she's playing a joke on me. Like, this is going to be great. So I walk in, and there's literally these two girls doing their hair, and they both turn around at the same time, and they had these shirts on that said, "Ask me about my podcast." And it was like,
so
okay.
Meanwhile, I had seen them, and I'm like, oh my God, like I'm about to start one. Like, what can you tell me? And I mean, it was just fascinating. They had so much advice for us. So we hung out in the bathroom probably for another 20 minutes. Then finally one of us said, "Do we want to go get a drink and talk about this?" Like, why are we hanging out in the bathroom?
Yeah. And then just, kind of Alex alluded to it's taken on a life of its own, but it's just like in true fashion, like Alex is one of those, like, she's just like, when she puts something in her mind, she's going to do it. And like, you're going to go with her. And so we were in different sessions, like the last day, and we were in different sessions. And again, we'd been talking about it with people, and it was being really well received. So we knew we were onto something. And she goes, "Let's just put it out there." So we took our logo, we took the name, and we put it out on like Instagram and LinkedIn and all on our socials. And like within 20 minutes, we were swamped at the bar. And people were like, "Oh my gosh, this is so exciting. This is so great." And to your point, like, when is the first episode? It's like, well, I mean, we don't have any equipment. We don't even know how to do this. But that was on like a Thursday. We get home, and then Monday morning she messaged me, and she's like, "Okay, I've got all the websites registered. I figured everything out." She'd got Pod Page and Buzzsprout and all this stuff. And so we worked on that for about a month, and then we recorded one episode that was just her and I kind of talking about this. And then we tried to record with a girl that is now one of our best friends, and we had to record with her 3 or 4 different times. It was just so horrible. And had it not been for her, we probably would have just said this wasn't meant to be, but she kept going, you can do this. It doesn't matter how many times you can do this. And so she encouraged us. And I think just having all of these kind of pieces that came along the way, people encouraging us, people saying we could do it, people being exciting about it, about what we thought we could do. It just all just kept pushing us to do it. And like, Alex said, we're going into our 5th year now. So
that's awesome. That's I give you guys a lot of credit for that. That's a long time to do a podcast. I think I've done 3 different iterations of this podcast in 5 years.
Really?
Trying to land on what works. Exactly, what works, what I want to talk about, what aspect of my business, to focus on. And sounds like you guys hit your brand right away, which is awesome.
Hey, quick question for you. When was the last time your hotel social media actually brought someone through the door? If you can't answer that, it might be time to rethink your approach. At RevPar Media, we don't do marketing for the sake of marketing. Every strategy we build is designed to drive measurable results. More bookings, more visibility, more revenue. We've been on the operations side and we know what matters. If that's something you're looking to solve right now, scan the QR code on screen or hit the link in the show notes. Now, back to today's conversation.
So actually, obviously the show here is just talking about marketing in general, right? So how do you guys find marketing your podcast? Because clearly it's very recognizable. I think, just from the name, it's easy to say, it's very catchy. I remember, Annie, when you reached out to me on Instagram to ask me to be on the show, and I'm like, oh yeah, what's the name of your show? You're like, Alex and Annie. I'm like, that works.
Yeah.
Can't forget that.
Alliteration that, it works for sure. And actually, her last name is Holcombe, mine is Husner, so we have the same initials, and we both have kind of unusual, like H beginning last names. So it just all worked out.
It could have been the AHA podcast.
Our company is called AHA Moments.
The parent company of the podcast is AHA Moments and AHA Moments Media. And it's funny, the things that you do that I don't even know. We could have just set up the podcast as its own LLC, but for some reason we had the greater thinking in mind of let's start the business as something that's not just the podcast is part of that, but in case we want to branch off into other things, which lo and behold, we have and we are. So that was a wise decision on that part. But as far as marketing it, it's been the power of consistency has been probably the biggest thing that we've, in the course of 5 years, we've maybe only missed a couple Wednesdays. Like, we release every week, and just being present. And I think the way that we put together the strategy of every episode we put out is on all the audio podcast platforms, also distributes to YouTube. We do 3 different reels for each episode that are made into YouTube shorts. We do a LinkedIn newsletter. We do an email newsletter. And when we have guests on the show, which our show is primarily an interview podcast, they push the episode out and their company pushes this out, and then we push it out. So it's like we've really built a kind of a viral experience there, just due to the nature of the show. And really, just when we go to conferences, getting to speak on stage, and in most cases now we're actually asked to come because of the podcast, and people want us to be set up live and doing interviews and things. And so that's been fun, but it definitely gives us a lot more visibility when we're in person at those events too.
Yeah, that's awesome. Being that it's Women's History Month, and we're all about, that's why I had you guys on this month. It's all about,
cool.
What sort of advice would you give to, ladies out there looking to start a podcast or a company in general? Because obviously you guys have a whole company behind this.
Just do it. Literally, I think it's just, Alex and I are just enough apart that we've had somewhat different experiences in terms of mentorship or placement. And I say ours actually are closer aligned than some of our other contemporaries that do this. But I think sometimes women are made to feel like their voice doesn't matter, or that their voice should be secondary to somebody else. And so I think that it's about being comfortable in your own place, in your own skin, in your own journey, to know that you're here for a purpose, and you're here to lend your skills and your voice and your knowledge and everything that makes you unique to the world. And put it out there. If you have an
Mhm.
idea, it may not work, but it may morph into something else. It may morph into like, if you want to do it on your own, getting a partner, or it may just open doors that you didn't know existed. And I think that's one thing that we've both learned is that to not be closed off to the opportunities that come along. They sometimes they're like, oh, they seem great. And then you look at it, you're like, oh, maybe not. But
Yeah.
they're there because we put ourselves out there. And so I would just say to anybody, absolutely. If you have a thought, just give it a try. Like there's the worst that can happen is it doesn't work and somebody says no, but you're not going to die over it, So
Exactly.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I've always kind of subscribed to the thinking of, just commit first and figure it out later. It's like Grant Cardone line actually. But, once you make yourself committed to something, and this is exactly what we did when I pushed out on LinkedIn at that conference and socials that we were starting this podcast, like once I put it out there, now I have to do it because now everybody's going to be, expecting it. So it's like, commit to something and then you'll figure out how to do it. I mean, the details are, there are details, but you'll figure it out if you're committed enough to making it happen. And I agree on Annie's point too of just, everybody has a story to tell. And there are so many great stories that people don't think are worth telling that a lot of people will find very interesting. And, we talk about some personal things on the show, mostly business related, but we've ended up finding out that, at conferences and things, we'll have people come up to us that they don't know us, but they know a lot about us because we have shared tidbits over the years. And I just bought a horse about a month ago and I talked, yeah, I'm very excited, but I talked about that process on our first of the year, January episode. And since I talked about it there, now, like whenever I've been on meetings or the one conference I've been to, everybody's running up to me asking like, did you buy the horse? Or like, what's his name? What does he look like? And it's like, you forget that you had even mentioned something, but people cling to people that they know and they like and they trust. And I think ultimately putting yourself out there as authentically as you can that's where the magic happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, now I got to know about the horse.
Yeah.
What kind of horse?
Stick. He's American saddlebred. And I used to ride for years from when I was like literally a baby until I was end of high school. And it took a very long break, about 26 years to be exact. He's young. He's only 3. So he's still a baby and I have a lot to remember. So it's been fun so far.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I gotta say, that's one of the things that scares me.
Riding horses?
Yeah, I mean, they're not small animals.
No, they're not.
Yeah. As a kid, I was always a little curious about like skateboarding, but I was like, if I fall off of that thing, I could get hurt. Imagine falling off a horse.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, skateboarding actually seems scarier to me.
I would agree with that. I mean, I'm not exactly like running up to jump on a horse, but I feel like skateboarding would be more dangerous.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Only because I've actually fallen off of a skateboard in one of those like fall up, go up in the air and fall on the pavement. I've actually done that before. So I don't know. I feel like a horse would be less of a, I don't know. Just less.
Yeah.
My logic behind that was, a skateboard is about that much off the ground.
Yeah, I mean, the distance-wise, velocity makes sense for sure. Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
That is funny, but very cool. Well, we wish you and Chapstick a lot of fun. I'm gonna have to tune in because I like that. I'll live vicariously through you.
Yeah. There's going to be a lot of content coming, so stay tuned.
Love that. All right, so let's switch back gears a bit and just get into the conversation about vacation rentals versus hotels, right? We kind of touched on some of that earlier in the conversation. How would you say marketing the two assets are different, or are they different?
I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think they are for sure. I think that vacation rentals brings a lot more complexity, really, in every level. That if you're marketing a hotel, I mean, normally you could have a number of room types, but you are marketing a room type. And so that you as a revenue manager, you get to play Tetris with the board to move things around to be able to maximize the revenue there, versus with a vacation rental, you can't do that. If somebody's booking a specific unit for the decor and the view and everything else, you can't move them around. How Annie and I really connected early on was there's a lot of the condo resort type properties in Myrtle Beach and in Florida where Annie is, and I mean all across the country, but that they're condos or condo resorts that they are owned by homeowners, so they're vacation rentals, but they're marketed like a hotel, that they have the front desk and they have the F&B and they they do events and conferences and things like that. And so they really operate really in that kind of in between of hotel and vacation rental. And that industry has really had a lot of challenges because they're not fully one or the other. And the technology that's vacation rentals doesn't totally work for them, and the technology that's hotels doesn't totally work for them. And then you throw in Vrbo and Airbnb, and they have to be on those channels. But if they're on a hotel-based software, those don't connect. And so it's like they've got to use, beyond their booking system, a different kind of a channel manager for that inventory that really still is not geared towards vacation rentals, but it's what connects with their hotel PMS, the pools, and the other things that you have there. Versus in a vacation rental, it is either it's a standalone property, a home, or it's a condo, but you don't have control over the amenities. So I think it's, I don't know that either is easier. I think they're just different, but I think vacation rentals can be a lot more nuanced.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the thing that's interesting in vacation rental space also is there's a story that can be told with a vacation rental that you can't tell with a hotel. Now, I say that, there are some of these hotels that some of the brands have that are like the historic buildings where there's a story around it. But every vacation rental has a different look, feels. It has some history to it in some respects. A property manager, and I always said this when I was at Expedia, I was like, if you look at a property manager and they have 500 properties, they have 500 different general managers that they're working with, 500 different marketing minds that are involved in the conversation, 500 different beliefs in how the rates should be set, policies should be. And so a manager has to kind of like wrangle everybody in and find commonality to be able to market it, but then go into go all the way granular and say like, well, this property is going to fit this guest who wants this experience at this time, this way, whereas a hotel can be somewhat generic. So I think that I feel that marketers in the vacation rental space are a lot more savvy than hotels because there is so much complexity there.
Yeah. No, I think that's a very good point. So where do you guys see the vacation rental business going in the near future? Asking the question kind of on the premise, with hotels have marketed themselves very differently over the past, 5 to 10 years. People are getting a lot more active on social media, Instagram, TikTok, if they're really, courageous. Where do you guys see things changing, or how has it changed over the recent years?
I think that, as far as the timeline of things, or like how different parts of that we all struggle with have hit us. There's the airlines, and then there's hotels, and there's vacation rentals, and there's tours and activities. And with the airlines, dynamic pricing and what that did to the industry. Same with hotels, and then for hotels in particular, direct bookings and making sure that they needed to keep the bookings outside of the OTAs as much as possible, and then that hit the vacation rental side. And it's like all those things have kind of trickled down throughout those four sectors. And, for the companies that have been doing vacation rentals for a long time, like the one that I was at, we knew there were no OTAs back in the day. I mean, I think our website launched, the first version of it was like in 2000, but, it wasn't until probably the 2010s or so that really online bookings became, a big part of the business, that it was mostly phone and it was print and magazines and things. But the Vrbo and Airbnb for us are for sure the two biggest channels. We can't be anti-OTA because one, we're never going to beat them. So we might as well join them. And two, let them go out there and spend all the money on Google and everything else. And as long as you're set up to get your fair share of the bookings when somebody lands on that channel, then that's great. And the way, Annie and I, she's more distribution, I'm more marketing, but we both really understand that they go together, that if you get a guest from one of the OTAs, your job as the marketer is to make sure that next time they come back, they book direct. And I think, that's something we've known forever. But in our industry now, you've got the newer companies and people that have come into it post-COVID that they didn't even think about direct bookings because there was such an influx through the OTAs that they didn't have to worry about it. Well, now fast forward, and Airbnb in particular, that continues to make different policy changes that can really fundamentally change how you operate either as an individual host or a company on the platform, and it's risky. So when you put all your eggs in one basket, you really are setting yourself up for a bad situation. So there's been a lot more interest now, in the last year or so of people trying to get into doing direct bookings. But at the end of the day, the cost to do direct bookings and have that as a strategy, it's not like those bookings are free. I mean, the price that you pay to have a marketer that can run that, and the time that it takes and the budgets that it takes for paid, like there's an SEO. I mean, there's a lot to it, but I think a lot of companies they get on one side or the other and they fixate on it. But really, in today's day and age, I think somewhere in the middle is the healthy mix, that you've got both sides running simultaneously.
Yeah. And I think in looking at like where the industry goes, there's also kind of parallel to this direct booking conversation is we have a lot of challenge in markets with regulation. And some of it is fair. Some of it is, a fair assessment of the way the industry is because we don't have the standards and the maybe the regulatory stuff that was in place for hotels. We don't have that. And not to say that it's not needed. It's just, the people are trying to find where that space is. But I think because of that, it's causing some reactive regulatory, and there's also like this proactive, well, we're going to get ahead of it because we heard these horror stories in a market 10,000 miles away that could potentially come to us. So we don't want it to happen. So we're going to put these regulations in, these restrictions, these rules of engagement that didn't exist. So that's a really big problem. It's ongoing. But I think greater to that is within the markets, the conversation of working with your destination and being good to the market. I mean, Alex and I both come from markets where the vacation rentals are a very large portion of the overall economy. And if you took those out, there's a lot of things that would never have come to fruition for the market, the ball fields, the shopping, the restaurants, the attractions, those type of things, because the volume of people coming in for sports tournaments and large scale events and families coming in for their vacations. Like if that hadn't happened, the markets wouldn't have blossomed like they have. And so there has to be a recognition that we can all coexist, but it's how does that coexisting happen? And what is the messaging and who's going to drive that? And so there's a large call, a greater call for property managers and hosts in their markets to be more in tune with what their destination marketing organization is doing. I had a client just recently that's in Indianapolis, very large market, very well established, a very well run marketing for the destination. I mean, they have sports teams, they got all the stuff that a urban market would have. But they don't even acknowledge that vacation rentals exists in their market. So if you go there and go to visit Indy, you're not going to get vacation rentals. If you ask for, I need a long-term rental or a rental for a week, they're going to show you a hotel. They're going to show you one of the Marriott or Hilton brands that have kitchens, that type of thing. But even if you're taking your family, a microwave is not going to cut it as a kitchen, So it's just acknowledging that there are people coming to markets that need that. I mean, I always talk about the sports market for Panama City Beach. When I had hotels, we did a lot of sports. When I got the condos and got the vacation rentals, not a lot of sports, but when I had the blessing from the organization to go after and negotiate and sponsor and be part of it, it was like rocket fuel. It was like the sports teams loved it. They had washers and dryers. They could cook meals for the kids. It all of a sudden became more affordable because travel sports is expensive. And so I think organizations need to recognize the value of having that as an enhancement to their marketing and not a detriment to the hotels. So I do find it funny, and we talk about this a lot on the show, is that, hotels in markets, New York's a great example, they shut down the short-term rentals, but most of those hotel companies that are involved or backing some of that regulation that happens have short-term rental arms. They're diving into that space. They have timeshares, they have it. So they're talking out of both sides of their mouth, in my opinion. But it's like, how do we get everybody to the table to have a conversation? And so Alex has always said it very, very succinctly. It's just, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And so make sure you're at the table. And so that's what we just encourage everybody to do. But I think that's the big thing that's coming for vacation rentals, is how to collaborate better within their markets.
Yeah, that's great insight. So for those folks, because most people that I've met that are in the vacation rental ownership space, it's typically, a couple or a family. They may have just one or two things, and they're working with very small budgets. If someone was just starting out and they wanted to get into renting out a home, what would be the first thing that you would suggest that they focus on?
I mean, it depends. Like if it's a property that they bought as an investment property, you've got to make sure, I would say that, if you can within your budget, to make the property look unique. I think that's kind of the main thing. And as Annie, alluded to earlier, I mean, the value proposition of a vacation rental is that it does look different than just a standard accommodation. But, what are some of the things, big or small, that you could do to make it really, be Instagrammable, and that it's gonna stand out in the list of a million different Airbnbs on a website? That's a big part. And, really, if you want to be smart about it early on, thinking about how you make guests feel, welcome in the home, and what are the small touches that you can do to make sure that they do remember you for the next time. So whether it's, a guest book, or if it's a leave behind, like some sort of, if you made a brand for the house, like if you've got magnets or coasters or swag or something that you can let them take home with them, that's always a good thing. Most hosts get started, they just put the home just on Airbnb, and then they start realizing, well, there's Expedia and there's Vrbo and Booking, and there's other places that I could market this. So they now go to a property management system and a channel manager. But if you're just starting out, I think having that mindset of, I want to build something that I can continuously improve on as I get more sophisticated or want to get more serious about this.
Yeah, definitely have a plan and think about, where you want to be 3, 5, 7 years, so you can sort of know when you get to certain benchmarks what you need, what lever you need to pull. Everybody doesn't need a PMS out of the gate.
Right.
But when but if you think you're going to grow, you're going to want to start looking at that, because a PMS should never be. I've met people, and I can speak for myself, like that they find themselves all of a sudden they were managing one just cause, and then other people ask them, and all of a sudden they've got 15 properties, and they have a desperate decision to make a PMS, and they chose to choose a PMS, and they chose one and they didn't like it, but it was because they were desperate and they had to choose it. And I mean, just like in hotels, I mean, choosing a PMS it's not a fun task, so there's that planning. And we always joke about having a Bentley by Saturday, but it's not, it's a lot of work. And I think people need to go in with a mindset that, like, you can make it a viable business, and you can absolutely quit your day job and absolutely make it a business. But you have to think about, there's going to be work that's put into it. If you don't have that hospitality gene, it makes it even harder, I think, to be in this business. But if you are under the impression that this is a 9 to 5 or 8 to 4 or 9 to 3, like if you're really going to not have to work a lot, you're going to be very mistaken along the way.
Yeah.
All right. Well, lots of great insight there. But we always wrap up with the most fun question, and Annie alluded to it at the top, is talk about your most awkward travel moment.
Ooh.
Awkward travel moment. Well, I mean, awkward, I would say uncomfortable was our last trip to Italy. So we were all in Italy, and we were all supposed to converge in Milan together last fall. And I was meeting Alex in Atlanta, and then we were on the same flight from Atlanta to Milan. Well, my flight from Panama City to Atlanta got missed, and I got diverted to Paris, and then I was stuck with a friend in Paris. Meanwhile, they were in Milan. And of course, we didn't know this, but we have since learned that, when there's things going on in Europe. They like plan protests. They plan strikes. And so there was a planned strike on one of the. They didn't tell us about it. So there was riots, there was protests, there was rail strikes, and so we actually I didn't actually meet up with the Milan crew until we got to Genoa, which is 2 days later because we got stuck in Paris. But it was just all kinds of things. And I would say like it wasn't awkward so much as it was just uncomfortable because you're trying to navigate on no sleep in a country that is completely foreign. No one and everybody like navigating it in the country was like used to it. They didn't think anything of it. And we're just like, this is not how it is in America. You know, we just don't but we don't have rail travel like they do in Europe. So it's definitely, I feel like that was like, to me, has been the most like just everything was awkward from start to finish in that one.
Yeah.
Honestly, I bet I could have thought of a better one, but actually I like this one. That it started as a very awkward situation, but ended up being one of my favorite days of my lifetime. I think actually that I was in Vegas for a conference, was out there by myself. And it was the timeshare vacation club conference that they wanted to learn about vacation rentals. And so got to speak on stage. And, you know, again, one of those situations like when I first met Annie that I didn't know anybody really. The day that I was leaving, I got to the airport and got on the plane. We're about to take off, and all of a sudden, and they said, "Oh, we got to go back to the gate." And so they take the plane back to the gate. And this was a jumbo jet style, like 767. I don't even know how high the numbers go, but it was a huge plane. So we were waiting for like an hour to deplane, and everybody's in line, everybody's yelling, and you know, I'm just like, I don't want to be standing here in line forever. I'll just tell somebody to go get my bags and I'll just stay another night. And so I thought that would be a lot easier than it sounded, but they can't get your bags off the plane. So after waiting for probably 3 hours down in the baggage claim, hoping they would finally come along on the thing, I said, you know what? I have the outfit that I have right now. I have no other supplies, nothing. I'm just going to wing it. And so I went back down to the Vegas Strip and I got a room at the Wynn, and I just did the best I could and kind of like, you know, gym kind of clothes, like yoga clothes, just me by myself going out in Vegas. And I ended up the next day, I took a helicopter ride and I did the spa and I shopped, and it ended up being like just the perfect day of just like by myself and just like in no one to impress, because I couldn't have impressed much at that point. So it was just a fun day that came out of a seemingly terrible experience. So
that's
awkward
awesome.
And then good.
Yeah.
You went for a helicopter ride too, right?
Yeah. It was so cool. I mean, it's so cool. It was very adventurous, that trip.
Yeah, seriously. I love that. Cool. All right. Well, we're gonna wrap it up there. Let's let the audience know where they can find you. Where can they see you next?
Sure. Yeah. You can go to alexandanniepodcast.com. And from there, you can subscribe, listen on whichever platform that you like, or you can go right to the platform and just search Alex and Annie. But that's the best way to get in touch with us, or LinkedIn, Alex. My last name's Husner, Husner. Would love to talk to anybody. And hopefully one of these days we'll make it to a hotel conference. We've never been to a traditional hotel conference. So maybe one of these days.
Yep.
Or I may make it to a vacation.
Or you come to a vacation rental one. Yes, I think that's even better. Yeah. I think you'd enjoy the ones we go
to. For sure. Well, thank you guys so much for joining the show. This has been awesome. Always a pleasure to talk to you guys. Yeah. And as Alex said, go find these guys on LinkedIn, subscribe to the podcast. In particular, listen to the episode I was on, because they won't say it, but it was the best episode that they've ever
Oh, for sure. Hands down.
Obviously. And we will see you guys on the next one.
Awesome. Thanks, Calvin.